Hey everybody, it's Rob here at eTrailer.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Roadmaster high-power diode wiring kit on our 2008 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. Now obviously you can see we're getting ready to flat tow our Jeep behind our motorhome. Now that way we can take our Jeep with us on road trips, we can go to some places we couldn't go with our family and friends. And let's face it, a lot of times we get to that campground and a lot of people like to take Jeeps with them because they can take their Jeep a lot of places where your motorhome can't go. But there's a lot of components that we need, especially whenever you are towing a vehicle behind a motorhome or even a trailer for that matter. You got to make sure that you have your light signals at the back of whatever you're towing. Because as you can see, our Jeep is going to cover up some of the lights, especially if you're behind it. So our diodes are going to make it to where all the signals coming from our motorhome are going to get transferred to the Jeep's taillights. So whenever we're driving down the road at night, we're going to have our taillight signals, and if we're driving down the highway, we need to change lanes. Everybody's going to know what's going on because our lights on our Jeep are going to mirror the exact thing that's going on with our motorhome. And you can see that we got our left turn signal on the motorhome, and it is transferring it back here. Now it's a little bit bright today. We do have our taillights on, so it's maybe a little bit hard to see because of how sunny it is. But I really like the diodes because of a few different reasons. Once we have them installed, we don't have to worry about anything. We simply just plug in the cord from the back of the motorhome to the front of the Jeep, and they'll work like they're supposed to. But at the same time, when we're driving around, it's not going to affect our regular taillights, brake lights, and turn signals at all. They're going to work just like they did from the factory. And really, when you're comparing diodes to another option, which are those magnetic lights, I know we all seen those. They definitely work because it's a direct connection from that light to the back of the motorhome. But that does mean that we have to run a wire all the way to the front of our Jeep, plug it into the back of the motorhome, and once we get where we're going, we're going to tie all those wires up, find somewhere to put those lights. Not to mention, most Jeeps don't have a metal top on them, so we're going to have to find somewhere else to put those lights and make sure that the people behind us can actually see them. And again, it's just one more thing to worry about. We already have enough to hook up. I don't think anybody wants to take additional steps just so they can take their Jeep with them. So I like the fact that the diodes are a one-time install, don't got to worry about anything. But another great thing is that they actually protect our Jeep's electrical system. In case there was a problem on the motorhome end, it's going to prevent any kind of backfeeding and make sure the electrical system doesn't have any kind of short circuits or any kind of damage to it. Now, one thing I would like to mention about our diode kit is that there are several different options available. The one we have here is mainly just the diodes and the wiring in order to get it installed. There will be a few little things you'll need to pick up so that you can complete your install. One thing you will need is a socket that you're going to want to mount on the front of your Jeep, as well as the cord to connect the Jeep to the motorhome. Now, I always recommend getting a 6-way socket because typically you'll have 4-pole wiring, and that'll give you 2 additional circuits that you can use, whether you want to use a charge line or a monitor light for a braking system. I do also suggest that you go with a metal plug, especially if it's on a Jeep that may see some off-roading, gravel roads, some rough terrain. I just feel that the metal socket is going to hold up a little bit better than the plastic one. Now, I know some customers do get a little bit nervous when it comes to wiring. We are going to have to tap into our Jeep's electrical system. But rest assured, we're going to show you how to test everything, make sure you get the correct color wire and you understand everything. And in fact, let's go ahead and bring our Jeep into the shop and we can go through the process together. To begin our installation, we want to start at the front of our Jeep, and you want to leave a decent amount of wire, of your 4-pole wire, sticking out wherever you're going to be mounting your plug. Now, on our base plate, we already have a spot to mount it, and I always like to leave a few inches past that so we can wire up the plug. But you'll see that I actually drilled a hole through the plastic belly pan so that I could run my wire through, and our 4-pole wire is going to need to get routed towards the back. So I routed it through the belly pan, and I came behind it, started routing it over towards the driver's side frame rail. Now, when you are routing it back, you want to make sure that you stay away from any moving parts or any extreme heat sources that may damage the wire. But if you look back here, you can see where my wire came through. I ran it up and over the frame rail here, went over the supports, and then right here, you can see where I actually stuck my wire into the frame rail. Now, I ended up using a pull wire to help me get it in the frame, Just had an airline tube that I stuck in the frame till I could find the next hole, pull the tail end of it out, attach my pull wire, and started pulling it through. Because we want to keep our wire protected as much as possible. Because I know a lot of us do use our Jeeps for off-roading. So again, if you can run it in the frame, it's probably going to be the most protected you can get it. So our wire is inside the frame rail here. So we just kept going using that pull wire, kind of leapfrogging, going from hole to hole, just so I can kind of keep feeding it through. And once we got back here, there's a somewhat decent sized hole that you can kind of reach in, grab your wire, and start feeding it back again, because right here the frame kind of curves up. Continue to feed it through the frame, and then right at the back of the frame, we actually had it come out right by the sway bar here. So you should have a decent amount of wire left, but we need to separate each one of these wires pretty much as high up to that last point, or the last anchor point, that you can. Now, typically you can just grab it with your fingers, you can split them, separate them, but if not, be extremely careful. You want to grab a pair of cutters and cut in between each one of these wires so that we can have 4 separate wires. So once you have all 4 wires separated, we're going to move back up top to the rear taillight area, and we're going to be pulling those out. When we move back to our taillight, you'll notice you're going to have 4 screws that are holding the taillight in place. Now, actually, we only have 2 that we need to remove. The other 2 hold on the lens, so we're going to remove the 2 inner screws. You're going to use a Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips bit. We'll pull our taillight out. And we want to disconnect the wiring. The little tab right there, if we press down, should be able to slide the connector out. And we'll do the same thing for the other connector as well. Now you may need to disconnect the plug, which there's just a clip on there. You can either slide it off the clip or pull the clip off the taillight itself. But we'll go ahead and set our taillight aside, and we're going to do the same thing and remove the passenger side taillight as well. Now I went ahead and turned on my taillights. Now you want to make sure that's the only signal you have on right now. No turn signals, no brakes, just your taillight function. And we're going to be testing which wire corresponds with the taillight function. Now I do want to mention that our Jeep has trailer wiring on it, but fortunately for us, to make things a little bit easier to follow, the wiring is the exact same color because it's actually Jeep factory trailer wiring. So we can put our diodes before the trailer wiring, or we can put it really close to the tail light. Either way, we just want to make sure that we identify the correct wires and function that we're going to be tapping into. So again, I have my taillight function on, so I'm going to test the pins on the inside to see which one registers with my tester. So I'm getting a signal from the center pin on the top. You have that tab on top, it's the center pin, which corresponds to the orange stripe on the white wire. So it'll be this one right here. And we want to verify the color and position of wire over on the passenger side as well. So you want to go ahead and turn your tail lights off now, and you either want to put something on the brake pedal that'll keep it pressed, or have an extra set of hands hold the brake pedal so we can activate our brake lights. Now obviously the tail lights aren't in, but we can see on the third brake light that it's coming on, so we know the brakes are being activated. I'm going to go ahead and test each one of these pins again and verify which one is giving me a signal. So this time, if we look at the connector, it's going to be the top right pin. And if we go to the back, it's going to be the white wire with the green stripe on the driver's side. Now again, we're going to go over to the passenger side and verify what color and position our stoplight signal is in. Now on the passenger side, our signals are in the exact same position of the connector. However, they are a different color. On the passenger side, the taillight signal is going to be the white wire with the purple stripe, and the brake signal is going to be the white wire with the yellow stripe. So we need to write that down for all the colors of wires, or remember what each function is for each side. So we're going to start on the driver's side. We did our testing, now we can start making our connections. We're going to start by grabbing our yellow and brown wire, and if you look into the taillight pocket, you can actually see some daylight, which means that we should be able to reach our hand in and grab the wire. So I'm going to start feeding that yellow and brown wire up towards the taillight pocket until I can reach my hand in, grab the wire, and pull that slack through. Now, it's not a bad idea that once you do have the wire inside, go ahead and zip tie it to some existing wiring. Make sure it's nice and taut. That way, in case anything does happen, it's not going to fall back down and get caught while we're driving down the road. So you want to go ahead and pull some of the tape off the end of the wires, and then go ahead and pull a little bit of the loom back so we got a few inches of exposed wire that we can work with. Now I'm going to go ahead and start with our brake wire over on the driver's side. It's going to be the white wire with the green stripe. We're going to move down a few inches from the connector itself. We're going to cut that wire in half, and we'll strip back both ends of it. Once you have those stripped back, you want to grab one of the diodes that has all blue connectors on it. And we'll take two of the spade terminals. We're going to crimp them onto each one of the wires we just stripped. I want to grab our yellow wire, since that's going to correspond with our left brake and left turn signal. I like to give myself a little bit of extra slack, kind of estimate about how much you need to reach the connector. We'll cut that wire, and we'll strip back the end of it. I'll take that last blue spade terminal off the diode, and we'll crimp it in place. We can take our diode now, and if we look at the terminals, we're going to have two in terminals, and then we're going to have one terminal on the outside. The one going to the out needs to be the spade terminal that is closest to the plug or socket for your tail light. So we can plug that in. Then the wire coming from the harness is going to go into one of the in terminals. Doesn't matter which one. We just want it to go on the inside. And then our yellow wire will go into the last terminal. So you should have your diode with the factory wiring going from the in to the out, but also have your yellow wire going in out to the brake light wire. Now you're going to want to do the same thing for your tail light wire, except this time we want to grab the diode that has two blue and one yellow spade terminal. We're still going to put the two blue terminals on the factory wires that we cut, strip back the end just like the other diodes, and then we'll crimp them in place. Now again, give ourselves a little bit of extra brown wire. We're going to cut it. This time though, I'm going to hold on to the excess. We'll strip back one end of the excess. The end of the wire coming from the bottom. And we want to combine these two wires together. And that's the main reason why we want to use that yellow spade terminal. Because you'll notice that it's going to be a lot larger than the other one, and it's much easier to fit two wires in there rather than trying to cram them into the blue spade terminal. So make sure both the free end of the brown wire and the one coming from the bottom are both inside that spade terminal. And we'll take our diode, and it's going to go the exact same way. The one coming from the bottom, our brown wire, will go into one of the ends. The one furthest away will go into the other end. And then finally, the one closest to our taillight will go to the out. So your left side diodes should look like this once you have them all together. Now this is going to allow our factory signals to go through, out to the diode, work like normal, but also have a secondary signal that can turn those lights on while we're flat towing. Now we want to take our brown wire, we want to pass it back down through the taillight pocket, down so we can meet up with that other green wire, and the brown and green wire are going to need to route over to the passenger side, and we're going to hook it up over there the same way. The only difference is your green wire is going to be your brake signal wire. We're going into your brake signal on the passenger side, and the brown wire is only going to have one wire going to it because it's going to be the one that we pass back down through. So over here on the passenger side, this is what your diodes should look like once you get them installed and fully in place. Now on the back of your diodes, you're going to have some double-sided foam tape. What I usually do, just because it takes up less space and it'll keep them a nice, neat little package, I'll take the backing off of the diodes and I'm actually just going to stick them together. And we have plenty of room inside the taillight pocket to get everything back in place. So we just take our taillight, plug it back in, then we get the hardware and re-secure everything. So the back of our frame right now, where all of our wires came out, we should still have one more wire left. This will be our white wire. That's our ground. So we need to either find a factory ground or we can create a new one, and we're going to want to use the self-tapping screw in our kit. So we're actually going to ground ours directly against the frame, since it'll be out of the way, and if we move back a little bit, it'll be protected by the bumper further back here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my wire to about the length that I need. We can strip back the end of it. I want to grab the small ring terminal out of our kit and crimp it in place. Now you're also going to get a self-tapping screw in your kit. I'm going to use a 5/16 nut driver, and I'm just going to secure that wire directly into the frame. I always like to get the hole started first, that we don't have to worry about the screw potentially breaking or the wire getting wrapped up in it. You just want to make sure that ring terminal is not moving and that the screw is nice and secure, but you don't strip it out. Now obviously we need to put a socket on the front, so we need to wire one up. Now we're going to be wiring up a 6-pole socket. Now your kit's not going to come with one, but you are going to need some kind of connector so you can plug in the back of your motorhome to the front of your Jeep. On ours, we have a set screw right here, so we want to loosen that up. Actually remove the screw completely. Just make sure you keep an eye on it because it is a really small screw. We'll set that aside for now. We're going to open up the door on the plug, and we can actually just take a screwdriver, pretty much whatever you got, and you're going to want to push it out a little bit. We'll take our wires, make sure you catch it. And we're going to push our wires all the way through, and then kind of just push that plug out of the way. And make sure you got plenty of slack and room to work with the end of the wires here. And just like on the back where we separate them, we want to do that again, except we only need a couple inches. We don't need to go that far back. So just come in between each one, make a small cut, and just separate them back a few inches. And we're going to strip back the end of each one of these wires. If we look at the back of our socket here, each one of the terminals is going to be labeled. They are extremely small, and I suggest doing one wire at a time because the label is right where the set screw is. So as soon as you unscrew it, you can't see that label anymore. What I like to do is I like to start with the large terminal. It's a little bit larger than all the other ones. This one's going to be labeled G for ground. This will be our white wire. And if we move in a clockwise motion, the one at 12 o'clock, or this next one, it's going to be labeled T. That's for your trailer marker. That's going to be your brown wire. Then this one right here next to that is going to be labeled S. That's for electric brakes. It's not going to be used in our application. The center pin is going to be if you do have a 12-volt power source, maybe a charge line for your battery. That's going to be your auxiliary power. Again, not being used in our application. The next one on the bottom here is going to be labeled R for right turn. That's going to be your green wire. And then finally, this one over here is going to be labeled L for left turn. That's going to be our yellow wire. So we can start at the top. It's going to be labeled T for trailer marker. We're going to loosen up that screw. I always suggest to leave that in, just loosen it up pretty good, because they're extremely easy to drop those screws, and then we won't be able to tighten down the wire inside. But we'll take the corresponding wire, put it in the terminal, and I always leave just a little bit of copper sticking out of the terminal. That way I know that the insulation on the wire isn't going to cause any kind of connection issues. We'll put that in there, tighten down the set screw, make sure it's nice and secure. We just want to go through connecting the rest of our wires. So once you've got all your wires in place, this is what it should look like. Then we can take the plug, and I like to get a rough idea, kind of look to see where that set screw is. And I'll look to see where the set screw on the socket is and kind of help guide it in. It is keyed, so it can only go in one way, but it just makes it a little bit easier if we can get it started the right way, so that it can go in place, make sure it's seated properly so we can get that set screw back in place. Now, this part isn't required, but I do suggest doing it. I always like to backfill the socket with dielectric grease. So just put the nozzle in there and just put a really good amount inside there. Just fill it up completely. And then once I know I got plenty of dielectric grease inside of there, I'm going to come back with some tape. I'm going to seal that entire back of that hole up and end up covering up a decent amount of this wire, not only to help protect it, but it will cover up some of those bright colors on the front of our Jeep as well. Now, we already have a spot on our base plate to mount the plug, so I'm just going to take some self-tapping screws and mount it directly to those posts. Now, the final step of our installation is going to be testing our circuits and making sure everything works properly. Now, I hooked up our Jeep to a tester. That way I can isolate the Jeep, make sure all the circuits are working, and not have to figure out if there was a problem, if it's the Jeep or the motorhome. If I go ahead and turn it on, we can see that our taillight function is working, along with the left turn signal, my brake lights, and the right turn signal. Now that we know that everything's working, it would be a really good time to go back, clean up any loose wires, hide your wires, tie everything up, and just give it an overall clean look. But again, I'm Rob here at eTrailer.com, and that'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster high-powered diode wiring kit on our 2008 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.